There is a strange feeling that almost everyone experiences at some point in life. It usually comes in quiet moments. When things are still. When there is no distraction loud enough to cover your thoughts. It is that moment where you think about everything you planned. Everything you promised yourself. Everything you said you would start. And for a few seconds, it all feels clear. Like you finally understand what you need to do. But then something shifts. Not outside. Inside. And suddenly, the distance between what you want and what you actually do feels much wider than it should. You don't even notice when it happens. But somehow, the urgency fades. The energy drops. And the same goal that felt so real a moment ago starts to feel distant again. There is a strange pattern in human life. Most people don't struggle with setting goals. They struggle with what happens after. Because in the beginning, everything feels clear. The goal feels exciting. The future feels close enough to touch. You write it down. You plan it. You feel ready. But then something changes. Not in the goal. But in you. The distance between intention and action suddenly feels wider. And what once felt obvious now feels heavy. So you wait for a better moment. A clearer mood. A stronger motivation. But that moment keeps shifting further away. And slowly, without noticing, the goal stops being something you are moving toward. And becomes something you are thinking about. There is a reason this happens. And it has nothing to do with laziness. The human brain was never designed to pursue goals in a straight line. It was designed to respond to what feels immediate. To what feels safe. To what feels familiar. Because for most of human history, survival depended on reacting to the present, not building toward the future. So even now, in a world filled with long-term planning and ambition, your brain still evaluates everything through a simple filter. Does this feel safe right now? Or does this introduce uncertainty? And anything uncertain, even if it is good for you, creates a subtle form of resistance. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just enough to slow you down. Just enough to make you postpone. Just enough to make later feel reasonable. This is where most goals begin to weaken. Not in failure. But in delay. Because delay feels harmless. It feels like nothing is happening. But psychologically, something is happening. Each delay strengthens your attachment to the current version of your life. And weakens the version you are trying to build. Not because the goal is wrong. But because your mind is constantly choosing what it already understands over what it hasn't experienced yet. This is why two people can set the same goal. But only one actually follows through. It is not about intelligence. It is not about talent. It is about how the brain handles uncertainty. For one person, uncertainty becomes action. For the other, uncertainty becomes hesitation. And hesitation always feels rational in the moment. That is what makes it so powerful. The brain does not say, don't do it. It says, do it later. Wait until you are ready. Start when things feel easier. But readiness is not a starting point. It is something that is built through exposure. Through repetition. Through doing the thing before you feel prepared for it. And this is where most goal systems break. People wait for confidence before action. But confidence does not come first. It follows action. Every time you act in the direction of a goal, even when it feels uncomfortable, your brain updates its understanding of what is possible. And slowly, what once felt unfamiliar starts becoming normal. This is how real change happens. Not through motivation spikes. But through repeated moments of action that override hesitation. At first, it feels unstable. Because you are no longer fully aligned with your old patterns. But not yet fully aligned with your new ones. so everything feels slightly off. But that discomfort is not failure. It is transition. It is the mind adjusting its internal expectations of who you are. Because every goal you try to stick to is not just a task. It is a quiet attempt to change identity. And identity does not shift easily. The brain prefers consistency over improvement. It would rather stay predictable than become uncertain, even if the uncertainty leads to growth. So when you try to change your behavior, the mind doesn't just evaluate the action. It evaluates the identity behind it. Is this really who we are? And if the answer is no, resistance appears. Not to stop you, but to maintain internal consistency. This is why effort feels heavier at the beginning of any change. Not because the task is harder, but because it does not yet match the version of you that your brain recognizes. But something important happens when you repeat the action anyway. The brain starts updating its reference point. It begins to see evidence that contradicts the old identity. And with enough repetition, something shifts. The action stops feeling like something you are trying to do, and starts feeling like something you do. Naturally. Without negotiation. Without debate. This is the point where goals stop being fragile. Not because life became easier, but because identity finally caught up with behavior. And once that alignment happens, consistency stops being a struggle. Because you are no longer forcing action against identity. You are acting in agreement with it. And slowly, even the way you think about yourself begins to change. You stop asking, "Can I do this?" and start realizing, "This is just what I do now." That shift is subtle. But it is everything. So the real difference between people who achieve their goals and people who don't is not that one group understands more. It is that one group stays long enough in discomfort for identity to change. And the other group interprets discomfort as a sign to stop. But discomfort was never the signal to quit. It was the signal that something is being rewired. And sometimes, the most important progress looks like nothing is changing on the outside, while everything is changing on the inside. So if your goals have never stuck before, the question is not whether you are capable of achieving them. The question is whether you are willing to stay in the uncomfortable space long enough for the person you are becoming to finally match the life you are trying to build. Because in the end, you don't rise to your goals. You fall to the identity you repeat. And the only thing standing between those two versions of your life is what you choose to repeat next. And even that choice, repeated enough times, becomes the kind of person you are. And for those who notice it, things rarely feel the same again. Now here is a question to reflect on. What patterns in your own life do you think are quietly shaping your goals right now? Not the ones you talk about, but the ones you repeat without thinking. Think about it carefully. And if something comes to mind, drop it in the comments. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this exploration, like, share and subscribe. Until next time, keep exploring your hidden mind.